Welcome everyone to another session on free answer writing practice by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we are going to see GS1. The topic is going to be of geography. Specifically, the 3 questions will be from biogeography. Let us see the overview of those 3 questions. The very first question we have is with respect to mangroves. We have seen that how they are crucial not just for the coastal ecology but also for economy. And in this question, we will be also looking at certain kind of factors behind alarming loss of mangrove cover in India. The next question is about topic urban forestry. We have seen that it has emerged as an innovative solution for balanced development and conservation. For the same, we are going to see its need and various potential benefits. And the last question is with respect to soil formation. We are going to see what are the processes involved, and at the same time in the same question, we will also look at active and passive factors affecting the pedogenesis. So these are the 3 questions overview. Let us start with the very first question. Let's read the question together. Mangroves are crucial for coastal ecology and economy. Elaborate. Also discuss the factors behind alarming loss of mangrove cover in India. Now, if you see this question, you will realize the structure of this question answer is going to be very simple. In the introduction, you will give either the definition what exactly mangrove refers to, or you can provide certain data points like what is the mangrove cover in India. We have certain reports like Indian State Forest Report which provides us with such kind of data points. In the body section, as we can see, there are 2 major demands. First, we have to talk about how mangroves are crucial for coastal ecology and economy. Now, you can divide this demand into 2 subparts, as in coastal ecologies and economy, the mangroves impact. And in the heading 2, you can talk about the factors behind alarming loss of mangrove cover in India. So this is something what you will encompass in the body aspect. In the conclusion, you can talk about significance, reiterating the importance of mangroves. At the same time, you can also talk about certain initiatives taken by government or global bodies. So this is the structure for question number 1. Let us start with the introduction. In the introduction, as we can talk about the definition of mangroves. Mangroves are salt tolerant, rich in productive forest, and we have seen that how they are found in tropical and subtropical region. You can see from the map how the mangrove distribution in India looks like. And as per the Indian State Forest Report 2021, we have witnessed that the mangrove cover is almost 5,000 square kilometer, which is 0.15% of the total geographical area of the nation. So these are the data points and definitional aspects that you can inculcate for the introduction. Let us move on to the body. Now, as we have told that the body, the heading 1 can be divided into 2 parts. Firstly, the significance for coastal ecology, and in the second part of the heading 1, we can talk about the economy. So we are talking about significance, and this is the first subpart of the same. You can talk about that how they provide for rich biodiversity. Now, mangroves are highly productive regions, and thereby they also have this kind of benefit that they promote biodiversity. The second is with respect to natural coastal protection. Now we have to talk about coastal ecology. Now mangroves provide certain kind of protections from storm surges, tsunami for the entire region. The next is with respect to carbon sequestration. Now we have seen that mangroves, they provide almost 3 to 5 times more carbon sequestration than tropical forests. So thus they have the significance for the coastal ecology. And lastly, they provide certain ecosystem services, regulating, supporting, provisioning, as well as cultural services, which is very significant for the coastal ecology as well as for the economy. Let us move on to the subheading 2 of the heading 1 of the significance of mangroves for coastal economy. We have seen that how they are very crucial for certain medicinal values such as antibacterial features. Next is with respect to livelihood support. Over here we are looking at certain forest produce that can be derived from mangroves. We have seen that how the wood which is derived from mangroves is pest resistant. The third is economic importance for fishing industry. We have seen that how mangroves are found at the junctions where we can find a prominent fish rich sector. And lastly, we can talk about ecotourism promotion, as they provide for rich biodiversity as well as certain ecosystem services. Ecotourism is also a beneficial outcome of mangroves. So these are the significance of mangroves. Now let us see the factors behind the alarming loss, because we have seen various reports which talks about like India have witnessed 40% decline of the mangroves in the last century. So for the same, we will understand what are the factors behind such kind of loss. So this is the heading 2. The major demand, the second demand of the question is factor causing alarm in loss of mangrove cover. Firstly, we are witnessing coastal development through infrastructure as well as industrialization and urbanization around the coastal region. We are looking at shrinking of such places. Then we are looking at agriculture. Expansion of agriculture is also threatening the mangrove covers of the nation. Then we have pollution with respect to air, water, soil pollution, which is again affecting the mangrove cover of the nation. And the next is aquaculture expansion. This again we are talking about how they are very crucial for fishing industry, but at the same time that kind of aquaculture promotion is also over exploiting the mangrove cover of the nation. And lastly, we are looking at climate change like sea level rise, rising temperature, which is impacting the productivity of mangroves as well. So these are the kind of proof points that you will inculcate for the body in heading 2. Let us move on to the conclusion of this question. For the conclusion, you have the opportunity to talk about way ahead that mangroves are very crucial for not just coastal ecology but also for economy, and thus there must be a joint effort to ensure that their survival is in sync with humans' need. You can talk about certain initiatives such as Global Mangrove Alliance. You can talk about Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitats and Tangible Incomes, MISHTI, and you can also talk about that how it is inculcated with certain national programs. So this is something which you can inculcate in the conclusion to enrich your answer. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate all of these proof points in our answer writing practice. Firstly, in the introduction, you can give a brief definition, then you can give certain data points citing certain reports about the mangrove cover of the nation. Then in the major demand of the question where we have to talk about the significance, you can divide the same for coastal ecology and coastal economy, provide certain proof points along with examples. Then you can talk about the factors causing alarming loss of mangroves cover. Over here you can initiate with a transitionary line where we have witnessed 40% loss in the mangrove area in the last century. Then you can provide the factors along with examples, and lastly in the conclusion you can talk about the significance of mangrove for the balance of sustainable development as well as for environmental protection, and lastly you can cite certain global level initiative or national level initiatives for their conservation. So this is all for question number 1. Let us move on to question number 2. Let's read the question number 2 together. Urban forestry has emerged as an innovative solution which balances development and conservation. Describing urban forestry, discuss its need and various potential benefit it offers. As you can see the question, in the second half of the question, you can see the direct demand, what exactly we have to inculcate in an answer writing. Firstly, the statement which talks about that how urban forestry has emerged as an innovative solution which balances development and conservation. It is giving you an idea that in what direction you might have to take the answer, what kind of points you might have to inculcate. You have to talk about certain level of innovation as in urban forestry and how it helps with respect to development and conservation. So if you structure this answer in the introduction, you can describe urban forestry. You can cite certain examples as well to ensure that you have a very explicit idea of what exactly urban forestry refers to. In the body, you have to talk about firstly its need and secondly various potential benefits. So you will write around 4 to 5 points why exactly we need urban forestry, and then in the second heading of the body you will talk about that what are the kind of benefits we derive from urban forestry. And lastly, in the conclusion, you can give certain linkages with SDG, or you can also link certain historical example where urban forestry has been witnessed and how urbanization has been closely linked with such kind of phenomena. So that is all for the structure of the question's answer. Let us start with the introduction. As I mentioned, you can briefly describe what exactly urban forestry refers to, where in urban and peri-urban region, we are witnessing rising in pockets of forest kind of structures, not just pockets of forest kind of structures, but we are also looking at green infrastructure and anything which can directly connect and minimize the concretization of the urban spaces. So that is something as urban forestry you can refer. You can talk about how there are agroforestry, aspects of agroforestry is involved, tree planting, and we can also talk about it, how it has certain aspect of biodiversity in it. So this is all for the introduction. Let us move on to the body aspect. In the body, in the heading 1, we will talk about the need for urban forestry. Now, just from a commonsensical perspective, we can talk about it, why do we even need urban forestry. So you will start with the problems itself for the same, like what kind of problems that we are facing in the urban spaces, like urban heat island effect. So we have seen that how we do not have structures which can absorb the excess heat. So that's why we need this kind of forestry structure which can mitigate urban heat island effect. Then we have seen that how, like cities like Delhi, and also we have witnessing recently in Bombay, that there is issue with respect to the air quality. And over here we have witnessed that how trees and green cover can directly help mitigate such kind of issues. Then we can talk about it, how biodiversity is a very limiting thing in the urban spaces, and thus we need to have certain biodiverse areas like urban forestry, which can definitely provide solution for the same. Then stormwater management, as we mentioned that how urban spaces are concretized, so we do not have escape spaces for the stormwater, and we have witnessed certain kind of issues like flooding and all. So urban forestry also helps with respect to the managing the issue of stormwater. Next is with respect to promoting mental health and well-being. Now urban spaces without forest cover, without biodiversity, provides a very monotonous kind of situation, and over here we have seen that how they provide aesthetic value to the entire area. And lastly, acting as a carbon sinks. Now this can be again linked with the urban heat island, how urban forestry can also augment and help with respect to reaching our carbon sinking. So that is all for heading 1 of the body. In the heading 2, as we have to talk about the potential benefits it offers. So over here now we will be focusing more on the probable benefits that urban forestry can provide. So we have also already seen the need for it. Now let us move on to further benefits. Firstly, it helps with respect to climate change adaptation. Now we are witnessing rising temperature, not just rising temperature, rising extreme conditions. So forest can definitely minimize such kind of extremities. Then we are talking about economic opportunities. Over here we are looking at certain kind of development and employment engagement where urban forestry can definitely play a crucial role. Next is with respect to social cohesion and community engagement. Over here we are looking at how urban forestry can become escape places for people to socialize and thereby augment the community engagement. Then we have sustainable urban development. We have already talked about it, how it helps with respect to stormwater management, air pollution. So thus, through urban forestry, we can realize sustainable development. And lastly, as we have seen that how it provides certain degree of aesthetic value, it can augment the ecotourism as well as help with respect to the safeguard of cultural heritage. So these are the kind of potential benefit that you can inculcate for the body under heading 2 for this question. Let us move on to the conclusion. Now over here you have possibility of writing 2 type of conclusions. As urban forestry is part of solutions for sustainable development, you can cite SDG 11 where urban forestry can help with respect to making cities and human settlement inclusive, safe and resilient and sustainable. Apart from that, if you want to go for an innovative approach, you can cite certain kind of literature, as in Metropolis by Ben Wilson provides for certain historical examples like Hanging Garden of Babylon, where we have seen that how forestry has been crucial role and played very important role in the development of urbanization. So we must not forget how it all started and thus inculcate in our future projects for urbanization, as well as implement the same in already existing urban places. So this is how you can talk about that urban forestry are innovative solutions for development and sustainable conservation. So that is all for question number 2. Let us see the model answer and understand how can you inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. In the introduction, you can define what is urban forestry. You can talk about the need for the same as well, which you can expand further in the heading 1 of the body. providing sufficient proof points and substantiation. In the heading 2, you will further write the potential benefit of urban forestry. And lastly, in the conclusion, you can talk about SDG 11, or you can talk about the example of historical urbanization. So that is all for question number 2. Let's move on to question number 3. Let's read the question number 3 together. Explain the processes involved in soil formation. Also identify the active and passive factors affecting pedogenesis. Now, this question is basically about pedogenesis, which refers to the soil formation. While understanding the structure of the answer, firstly in the introduction, you can start by expanding the idea what exactly is soil formation, as in pedogenesis. Then in the body, we have 2 major demands. Firstly, we have to talk about the processes. So in the heading 1, you will list down all the processes and explain in 1-2 line along with an example what exactly the processes refers to. In the heading 2, we have to talk about the active and passive factors affecting the pedogenesis. So over here, you will give a heading about the factors involved in the processes of pedogenesis, where you will list down 2 subheading, active and passive, where you can list down different dimensions and points for the same. So that is all for the body. In the conclusion, you can talk about why we need to conserve soil and what are the kind of threats that soil is already facing, and thus going ahead, soil plays very crucial role for the survival of living beings, and thus they must be conserved. So that is something you will inculcate in the conclusion. Now let us start with the introduction. As I mentioned, in the introduction, you can define the pedogenesis, which refers to the process of soil formation. Over here, you can talk about that how soil formation, it's not just a limited process, but it's a biochemical as well as physical process. So that is something you can talk about, write about in the introduction. In the body, you can talk about the processes involved. We will look at all the processes to understand what exactly they mean. But majorly we have 7 processes: weathering, decomposition and humidification, leaching, translocation, podzolization, calcification and salinization, and glaciation. So these are the kind of processes involved. Let us look at each of the processes and understand how they play a role with respect to the formation of soil. Firstly, we have weathering. Now weathering can be understood through climatic variation like temperature, moisture, which breaks down the rock. Now they include physical, chemical as well as biological weathering. Now we can understand the same, that how different kind of processes basically change the structure of the soil. So this is the very first process, and the very visible process is weathering. The second is with respect to the decomposition and humidification, where we have seen that how decomposition break down the plant material by enzyme and organism, which again changes the structure of the soil, and humidification from various types of humus from the plant remains. So this is how decomposition and humidification plays as a role for soil formation. Next is with respect to the leaching. Water percolation removes soluble material from the soil profile, and continuous leaching can deplete the upper mineral horizon, adding laterite soil formation. So water as an active force can also change the structure of the soil and thus help with respect to the soil formation. So leaching is a kind of process that we can understand through like this. Next is translocation, where we can talk about mineral move in solution and suspended between soil horizon. So this is basically the transportation of the soil material, where wind, water as well as plants and other structures play crucial role. And next is podzolization, which is a complex process forming podzoil soil, accumulating organic material. So we are looking at accumulation of iron and aluminium in the soil structures. Next is with respect to calcification and salinization, where we have seen that accumulation of calcium salt and salts in the solution. You can understand through this kind of images. And next is with respect to glaciation, where the formation of clay or wetland soil due to poor drainage structure. So we can see that it does not have much escape for the water particles. So poor drainage conditions. So this is the kind of aspect you can talk about in the process involved in the soil formation. Remember, you do not have to draw images. You just list down all the 7 points and give 2-3 lines of explanation for each. In the heading 2, as the major demand is factors responsible for the soil formation, and we have to talk about the active and passive. You can give subheadings. Firstly, you can start with the active factor. Firstly, it's climate. We have seen that how climate affects the physical, biological as well as chemical weathering of the soil. Next is biosphere and organisms. Over here we are talking about other factors, human beings as well as other living creatures, how they play active role with respect to the soil formation. We have looked like translocation, etc. Passive factors such as parent material. We have seen that how through time parent material wears down and the soil gets a very unique kind of structure based on the organic material which is underlying. The next is topographic and relief, which is around the area where the soil is located. It also plays as a passive factor. And lastly, with time, we have seen that how different processes can impact the formation of soil. So these are the kind of factors you can inculcate for soil formation heading of this body of question number 3. Let us look at the conclusion. In conclusion, you can talk about that soil faces various kind of threats such as desertification and flooding, etc. So you can talk about that they play crucial role not just for the human being but also for the entire biosphere, and thus their conservation must be at the front end. So that is something you can talk about in the conclusion of question number 3. Let us see the model answer and understand how can we inculcate the same in our answer writing practice. Firstly, in the introduction, you can define the same. You can give a little bit idea how exactly soil formation is part of physical biochemical process. Then you can talk about the processes involved and you can list down the processes with 2 through 3 line of explanation. Next is factors responsible of soil formation. Firstly, active. You can list down the active factors and give idea what exactly they play, how exactly they play role. And next is passive. Again, that kind of explanation can help with respect to making your answer very exact to the demand. And lastly, you can talk about call for conservation of the soil. So this is all for question number 3 and for today's session. Thank you and keep writing.